Hey guys, tried recording this probably 3 or 4 times and the words weren't wording. I got interrupted several times and I was frustrated, so then my furnace kicked on, but I turned it off so I could record this video just for you guys. On today's episode, we are going to talk about failure. I'm going to give you some real life examples from my life and I'm going to bring the energy, so to speak. I have a very different view than most people on failure. Speaking of which, let me dissect this for you for a second. Okay, so first we're gonna pull up the definition of failure. I did not look this up before I did this video. I do apologize, but also not sorry. Lack of success. The omission of expected or required action. The failure to comply with the basic rules. What are those rules exactly? Like, is there like a book on it? Is there like arithmetic? Because the more that I think about my failures, the more that I realize that, well, they all pivoted me where I'm at today. Is it a glorious time of my life right now? No, and this is exactly why I'm talking about it today, because you have your logic and you have your emotions. And if you're anything like me, you struggle a lot with your emotions. It's not fun. They come in peace. Alright, so we're gonna back the bus up to my early 20s. We're just gonna start there because I've recorded several sections of this and I kept deleting it. So we're just gonna keep it the way it is and go from there. I'm having a really hard time finding my words because there was so much shit that happened in my 20s and so many things that seemed like they were failures but really were getting me to where I'm going in life, and I still don't really know what that looks like. At 31, I'm still figuring things out. Alright, so I think the best talking point to start with is my early 20s. I worked at this clinic. I could schedule for all these different sites for a bunch of doctors and stuff like that. I was a scheduler. That was my job. And at the time I was dating this guy, and we had been together for almost 4 years, right? And there were subtle things and really odd behavior from him. Like, I caught him with an extra cell phone. I caught him texting, but with the S word to his baby mama. And it took me about 1.5 years to get out of this relationship because I just felt completely stuck. And this was my first longtime boyfriend, the longest relationship that I had ever been in. And I'm working at this job. It was the best job I had ever had. Granted, it was my early 20s. That was really good for myself because before that, I was working at Red Wing Shoe and I was working at a factory making boots. And that was like, when they told me my retirement age would be 75, I was like, WTF, not me, not today, Satan. I'm not gonna do that. I am not gonna be that bitch, okay? So things aren't working out with this guy, and I knew it for a very long time, like I said. And the biggest reason why I think I held on so long was because I was afraid of how people were gonna perceive of me, or I felt like it was a failure. I felt like it was a loss. And I started dating him, I want to say probably like 1 year after my mom had passed away, maybe 1.5 years after my mom passed away. And I should have listened to my intuition at the time. I mean, my intuition has been my guiding map, but I've been a dumbass sometimes, or I've ignored it. And I'm just like, why do I do this to myself? I should have known the first indicator because it was like 6 months after, no, it was like a year, 1.5 years after my mom passed away when I started dating this guy. And I was really struggling with the loss of my mom. For those of you who are new to my channel, my mom unalived herself back in 2012, and I have spent the last over a decade trying to repair myself, trying to fix myself, trying to heal myself, trying to be a normal functioning person in society, and carrying all this baggage with me and just going through all of this other stuff. Anyway, I ended up breaking up with this guy, and like, my job was the only thing that I really had of value at the time. At this time, I wasn't talking to my dad, and I moved in with my aunt. I drove 1.5 hours one way to work. I drove 1.5 hours back. I did this for about 6 months until I could transfer to the other location that was closer near my aunt's house. It was like 20 minutes away. I drove 1.5 hours one way to work in the freaking dead middle of winter. I was an idiot. I wish I would have just found a different job, but I was young. I didn't know what else to do. I was like, how am I gonna pay my bills? And I was so worried, and I was in all this credit card debt because before that had happened, I spent thousands of dollars on modeling and acting classes, which I didn't need to, but I got sold this stuff and thought that maybe, you know, oh my God, well, if I buy into it, maybe I'll become a high fashion model and my life can change and I can make my mom proud, because my mom always said that I was really pretty and I should be a model. So before all that, like, or during dating this guy, I got into high fashion modeling, and I did book like a couple of jobs, not like a ton when I was with him, but I got like an editorial spread in this bridal magazine. I might pop a couple pictures up in here. I look completely different. I'm basically blonde at the time because that's what like the modeling world told me to do, was like, okay, dye your hair one color, and I didn't like the color brown, so I ended up putting a ton of highlights in. I should have just left it dark, but anyways, this was like after I had colored hair and I had to dye like a certain color. Fast forward, moved in with my aunt, driving back and forth to work. I end up getting the news that I could transfer to this other location. I'm like, sweet, this is great. Well, it didn't take long for me to realize that my manager there and I did not really see eye to eye. She wasn't a bad person. She just was very avoidant with things, which I could see why. There was a lot of changes going on. We got a new system. Looking back on it now, I know she had a lot of pressure and a lot of weight on her shoulders. And by this time, I don't know what it was about the environment that I was working in, but I just got, like, my mental health was at an all-time low. I got out of an almost 4-year relationship. I left all of my coworkers back where I was working, and I felt like this sense of failure. You know, I couldn't make enough money to pay my bills, to live on my own. I was 21 or 22 at the time, beating the shit out of myself, beating myself up for living with my aunt. And I was just a baby, basically, you know, like I was still really young. And I wanted to pursue my dreams of becoming a high fashion model because I just wasn't booking work in Minneapolis. Like, everybody was saying, oh, you're too editorial, you're too high fashion for our market here. Because Minneapolis is very commercial. Like, if you're in the Midwest, it's the smiley, cheesy smile. And I've always just been a very RBF type person. I have a very bubbly personality, but I have a very RBF type face about me, and that was what I liked about modeling. I like to portray these facial expressions and give emotion because I was going through so much at the time, you know? So I got on an airplane with a couple of girls and we went to New York to check it out, see what it was about, and I was like, oh my God, this is what I want to do. I'm going to be a high fashion model. I'm going to go for this. And while I'm out there, I end up meeting this guy, and we hit it off, and we ended up dating. And so we were dating long distance at the time, where we weren't dating long distance for very long. I think it might have only been a couple of months. And just one of the nicest guys I've ever met in my life. I have nothing negative to say about this dude. It just didn't work, you know, it didn't end up working out with him. But at the time, I was taking the Amtrak into Manhattan from New Jersey because New Jersey, the rent was a lot cheaper, and his parents lived in New Jersey at the time. So I was like, all right, well, I can't afford to live in Manhattan. And so I knew that in order to afford things, I needed to work and I needed to pay my way. I was like, all right, well, I have to have a full-time job because I have stuff to pay for. During this time, I was a full-time student in college. I was going to college full-time. I had a full-time job at this fertility clinic. And then I was taking the Amtrak in on my time off, or the little bit of time that I had, to go to these casting calls in Manhattan and New York City. I was in Times Square all the time. I went in weekly. I went in religiously. I can't tell you how many open calls I went to, and I just never got picked. And I pursued this thing. And the problem that I was running into, like, there was this one agency I signed with that was like a smaller one, but this was like towards like the end when I decided to move back to Minnesota. This was like nearing the end is when I got signed. I wished, you know, it would have been cool to see what would have happened, but I was so homesick at the time. Anyway, the problem I was having a full-time job and being in the modeling industry, or even acting for that matter, is extremely difficult because when you get called to a job, you're expected to drop absolutely everything. You need to be available, you need to be on right now, and I was like, well, I can't just like leave work and get fired, you know, like I have to pay. My rent at the time was, this was back in 2018. My rent was $1,650 for a one-bedroom apartment, which would probably be cheap over there right now, but at the time it was extremely expensive. Me and my boyfriend at the time lived there together, and things just weren't working out between him and I. I was getting really down on myself, and like, you know, I was feeling like a failure because no matter what I tried, I was dieting, I was exercising religiously. Like, I was incredibly skinny, okay? Like, I was 123 pounds, I think, at the smallest. I was obsessive about food. I think it was a problem. Now that I reflect on it, like, I was trying to do it healthy, but like, there was no way that I could have a 24-inch waist without like starving. Basically, my waist was 25. I could never get it smaller than 25. That's just how my body was built. And my hips, I have a bigger booty on me, so like, they wanted my hips to be 34, it was 35. So in Manhattan, I wasn't skinny enough, which is kind of messed up. Anyway, I ended up moving back home to Minnesota because, like, one, my relationship there wasn't working out with this guy, and he wasn't a match for me, right? Like, he wasn't the person for me. I flew home to Minnesota. This was before I moved back, and like, I saw my dad and I saw everybody else, and I just got really homesick, and my dad's like, okay, well, if you want to move back home, Ty, like, you can do that. Because I think he knew how badly I was just homesick, and on the airplane ride back to New Jersey, I was bawling because I didn't want to live there anymore. Like, I think I had it after about 10 months of tirelessly trying to pursue this modeling thing that I was like, how the hell is this going to work out if I can't go to an actual job, right? So I moved back and I was like, it's okay, you know, trying to recover from this sense of feeling like I failed at it. Because, like, it wasn't working out in Minneapolis, then I went over to the East Coast, it wasn't working out over there, and I was like, well, at least I have my degree in my back pocket. I'm gonna graduate with a bachelor's in business management, and man, when I tell you I was proud of myself, I'm not kidding, because I worked my ass off for that degree. I was on the dean's list, I got straight A's, I was an incredible student. I tried, I applied myself, I gave up my social life, I gave up literally everything to go to school, all on my own. Well, I get to graduation day after I moved back from my failed attempt at modeling on the East Coast, and I was like, they gave me the pamphlet to tell me what my degree was, and it said Certificate in Business Management. And I'm like, wait a minute, you guys got something wrong here. Like, my stomach just dropped. And I went to the lady who was there and I was like, hey, like, I was enrolled for my bachelor's degree, like, I should, why does it say certificate? I already have my associate's degree. And they're like, oh, okay, no big deal. She scribbles it out and writes Bachelor's of Business Management and Applied Science. And I was like, sweet, we're rocking, right? Go to graduation, walk down with my cap and gown, paid an arm and a leg for the stupid freaking pictures that I got, and, something wasn't sitting right in my spirit. A few weeks passed by when at this time I was living back home with my dad, and that was after I moved back home from New Jersey, and I recently started talking to him again. I get mail from my college. And I'm like, yes, this is the moment I've been waiting for. I got my degree in business management. I worked so hard for this. I open it up and it says Certificate of Business Management. And I'm like, okay, something is definitely not right. Because why would they send me a certificate? Call the school and they're like, well, sometimes they send certificates, blah, 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 because you do get certificates when you get a degree and stuff like that. Like, it's been a while since this happened, right? This was back in 2019, I think, 2019 or 2020. And I ended up finding out that they had me enrolled in the associate's program. And I was like, what do you mean I'm in the associate's program? I already have my associate's degree. And they're like, oh. And I could tell that the lady's voice dropped because they knew they made a really bad mistake. And their question to me was, how come you didn't check over your paperwork? I'm like, I'm sorry, lady. My mom died. I am the first person in my family to actually go to school. I'm doing all of this shit on my own. I didn't know what I was signing. I was in my early 20s. Nobody educated me on that stuff. I was, what's the word for it? I was just freaking, I didn't know what I was doing. I don't even know what the word is for that, but like I was innocent. I didn't know what I was doing. So there I was, and I can't even explain how angry I was. Like, they didn't, yeah, the working stuff out with me was just BS, in my opinion. Like, it wasn't right. I was angry for months, and I felt like I failed. I was like, all of this stuff that I've gone through, and I thought that the one thing that I worked my ass off for, I'm still emotional about it. I don't know why I'm crying about this. I just know that I worked incredibly hard in school. I was on the dean's list, I had straight A's. I was great at, I applied myself so hard. I tried so hard in math. I'm not good at math, but I had a really good grade because I applied myself, and my teacher's like, you're the best in class, like you're trying the hardest, and I really was. And I felt like I failed. And during this time, I was like, well, might as well buy a house. I have nothing going for me. I don't have the degree that I thought I had. I couldn't understand why life was sucking so bad, you know, and there's still a part of me that kind of doesn't know, you know, but I applied myself. There's so much that happened in my 20s, like stuff that I don't even have time to get into depth about. And I was like, fuck it, I'm gonna buy a house, because what else am I gonna do with my life? All of my family members, all my cousins are having kids. My brother, my sister had kids. Everybody was getting married. I couldn't even manage a relationship because I had issues from my mom dying and abandoning me, and I was going to therapy. And, you know, I didn't even mention this, but like when I was in New Jersey, like when I moved there, I didn't have medical insurance anymore. Poof, almost gone. Quit antidepressants cold turkey. One, because I was sick of feeling numb, and two, I couldn't afford my medicine anymore. Don't recommend that. Don't do it if you're on antidepressants. But like, I tried all these treatments. I went to therapies. Like, nothing could, like, I couldn't fix myself. I didn't feel like I could just fix myself. And I felt so alone. I felt so alone. I did. And I was like, okay, well, God, you know, at least I have this bachelor degree going for me. So yeah, I went and saved my money for a year and a half, worked really hard, and I bought my house. My first house. The first two offers that I had fell through. And I was like, God, like, life is really sucking at the time, you know? Like, the first house that I, you know, was approved for, and then, like, the loans, like, stuff just kept falling through. Like, the first one fell through, and then the next one did. Well, I'm gonna get into that in a second. Just wait. I ended up working this job, and then I quit, and then I went to a different job. And I worked through this temp agency, and I applied myself, and I busted my ass. One day I get called in the office, and it was like by the big wig, and I was like, oh boy, here we go. And they're sitting me down, and him and this other lady, like one step below him, like they were upper management. And my desk was like right next to his office, and he goes, Tyler, and I'm like, am I getting fired? And he's like, oh my God, no, we see how you come to work every day, you put your head down, you do your job, everyone's boasting about, raving about how great you are at your job, they can't give you enough work. Like, that was like my escape, was putting my head down and working, because then I could escape my problems. And I really applied myself at this job because I really didn't have much going for me. And he's like, well, we want to promote you. And he's like, what kind of degree do you have? And I was like, well, I mean, if I'm being honest here, I have my associates in business management, but I went to school for my bachelor's, and they had me in the wrong program. So I should have had my bachelor's, but I don't. I know it sounds like a lie, but it's the truth. And him and this manager looked at me, and he's like, that's fine. You can still have the job. What we need you to do is we need you to apply for it. And this was like a God moment where only God could have pulled these strings. This was the corporate job that I ended up quitting, by the way. It was the job, the golden ticket, the opportunity, the thing that I wanted right out of college. It was the dream job that I thought I wanted, right? I originally wanted to go to school for art. I've mentioned that before, but it was like 6 figures to go with like 1 year of living expenses. And like, I would have been incredibly drowning in debt if I would have did that. But lo and behold, you know, things in life end up working themselves out. You know, I went to school, didn't get my degree. It was like a year and a half later, I got the job that I wanted. It took some time, but it worked out the way that it was supposed to. Now we're gonna talk about the houses, right? There were 2 offers that I put on houses before I got this house, and I was devastated. Every time a plan or a deal would fall through, like, in my logic, I knew that patience was a virtue, and I knew that God was gonna provide on the other end of things. Well, I ended up getting this house after those 2 deals fell through. It was like a God moment. Like, there was just really ridiculous reasons as to why I couldn't get these houses, right? Like, one wasn't up to code, which is, you know, pretty common, but like just weird stuff, right? Like God things. I don't even know how else to describe it. Well, I'm in this house for about a year. I get driving down the road, and I passed the first house that I was gonna put in an offer on. And the house was lifted up and the entire foundation was getting tore down because it caved in. How would have I afforded that if I would have got the first house I wanted? I didn't get the yard, but I got a new roof on my house, new siding. Like, this is a pretty good house, knock on wood. I know there's wood in here. Anyway, second house that fell through, there were major electrical issues. Like, there's no way that I would have made ends meet if I would have got either one of those houses. And I cried. I cried about the degree. I cried about the 2 houses that I just didn't understand. Like, I knew things would work out the way that they were supposed to, but when you're in these moments of feeling like you failed at so much, especially in your 20s, because I think that that's what the 20s are meant for. I think they're meant to be learning lessons and growth opportunities. Yeah, I ended up being in this house, and then that dream job that I thought I wanted. Like, sometimes you have to get the things that you thought you wanted in order to realize that, hey, maybe I was kind of just wanting it because that's what everybody else told me to do. Like, you know, that's what you're told. As a millennial, I'm aging myself right now. They're like, okay, graduate high school, go to college, get a good job, get married, buy a house, you'll live happily ever after. You know, when I felt like such a failure in my early 20s, I know I'm talking to some younger person on the other side of this screen. I felt like a failure because I wasn't married, I didn't have kids. There were a few family members that were pretty mean about it. There were some friends that had some shitty comments, and ultimately, I just felt really crappy about myself because I felt like I was behind. And I'm 31, I still don't have kids. And now I get condescending remarks of, you must not have kids. I'll be like, why? They're like, oh, I can tell. And I'm like, would you like to elaborate on that for me? Because it really doesn't bother me. You know, I've watched these people who thought they were like, you know, better than me get divorces now. They have broken families. So like, sometimes thank God for unanswered prayers. You know, I went through those things, and then when it was like last year, February of 2024, I quit my corporate job because I just wasn't happy. My manager quit, that was my absolute favorite. And once he left, like, I was pretty much checked out at this point. I just, you know, because I already had it, but I hung on because he was a great boss, and I got to work from home at the time, and my health was bad. My hair was falling out. I went through some health issues while I was working at this job. And I was like, oh, I'm gonna quit my job and I'm gonna pursue art. So to give you a little quick backstory. So yeah, I don't know if I mentioned this earlier in the video. I think I did, but I lost my mom back in 2012. I quit doing art. Before she did that, we actually had a store together, which I felt like was another failure, right? And lost her. I quit doing art for almost 8 years, and then I felt like it was like another God moment where God's like, hey, you need to go to Walmart, get some paints, paint brushes, you need to get art supplies, because there was just this deep hole of sadness within myself. I felt like I really couldn't heal, and I'm like, I don't know how to fix me, I don't know how to fix this, I don't know how to get better. And this was after trying 6 or 7 different kinds of antidepressants. My body metabolized them. I tried anti-anxiety meds. I didn't like the way that they made me feel because they made me feel like I wasn't even a human. Like, I felt like almost like some kind of robot. I didn't like antidepressants because they made me feel numb because my body metabolizes this stuff fast. And what I was realizing is they would keep upping my dose and my body would just keep metabolizing it, and eventually a few months later it just didn't work anymore. And I went to 3 different therapists after my mom passed away. I was already in therapy before she passed because my parents split up. I don't know why I'm talking about all that right now, but I guess it's important because it's part of my life and it's part of my story. Yeah, I went as far as genetic testing. I saw psychiatrists. I med checks all the time. I spent thousands of dollars in medical bills, and I think that that was a big reason why when I was like living with my aunt at the time and like around that period, I couldn't afford to live on my own, is because I was paying out the butt, even with a deductible, for my mental health. I couldn't afford to go to treatment. I had a therapist recommend it. She almost forced me into it, and I was a little SHIT at the time, and I looked at her and I was like, you can tell them whatever you want. I'm not gonna say it's true. I was like, you can't make me do anything I don't want to do. You can't make me, I'm not gonna do it. You can't make me, Margaret. I really don't remember her name, but like, after she tried pulling that crap, like I wrote off therapy and I was like, screw this, I'm never going back. But like when I moved back in with my dad and I was saving my money after my failed attempt at college, I was like, all right, I need help. So I went to therapy and stuff like that. But yeah, here I am almost 2 years later from quitting my corporate job, and I still don't feel a level of success, but I think that that has something to do with years of programming, my subconscious not really feeling like I measure up a lot of times. And I've been creating art since 2019, and I think I've had a business for 3 years now. I think it's been 3. So been pursuing this YouTube thing for over 2 years now. It took me, oh God, what was it? A year and a half to get 1,000 subscribers. And then I think 3 months, no, it took me longer than that. It was almost 2 years. I started earlier than I thought I did. I thought I started YouTube back in October of 2023, but I started YouTube back up, I think it was like August or September of 2023. Anyway, yeah, so here I am. 2 years after quitting my corporate job because my hair was falling out, I was becoming irritable. I didn't even know myself. I didn't recognize myself. I was angry. I was starting to snap at coworkers, and yeah. During this time of these last 2 years, I had to get a couple of jobs to make ends meet and pay the bills. It wasn't easy balancing a job and my creative endeavors at the same time, and do I really know where I'm going at in life? No. I have an idea, I have a vision, and what I see in my mind is, you know, I create art for me first, and the biggest reason is because it's so pivotal in my healing journey and going through all of those struggles. I know I missed probably a lot of very important parts, like I didn't touch on I dated so many people, oh my God. My worst stretch of dating was like from it was when I moved back. It was like 26 to, when did I break up with that last dude? 25 to 28. I dated, oh God. Yeah. After that, I got embarrassed of posting a relationship status because I'm like, it was like I was dating a different guy every 6 months to a year. I just was not picking the right people. I just wasn't. Nope. Learned a lot about myself. Yeah, that's what I'm saying is like, I shared all of that, not to dump my laundry on people, but because, like, what is failure? You know, I could look back on my life and be like, oh my God, all those are failures, but all of it was leading me up to this. And I still don't know where I'm going, but I'm hopeful and I have faith that it's gonna be a beautiful destination, even though I still struggle with the journey. Because you have your logic and then you have your emotions. My logic knows this is why I haven't quit, is because I made a promise to myself that, sorry, like, weird with clothing. Fuck, what was I saying? Oh my God, I don't remember. Squirrel, yeah, that's right. You have my logic knows, like I made a promise to myself that no matter what happens, I'm gonna continue to pursue YouTube, I'm gonna continue to pursue my dreams, and, you know, when I was in modeling, that wasn't a failure. As much as I've reflected on this recently, and the reason why is because I learned how to pose. So when I do photography, I know how to pose people, I know how to show them how to pose. I still get booked for modeling jobs, for hair jobs. That's a big reason why my hair is short. It used to be super long, almost down to my butt. I recently did a job with Paul Mitchell. So I still do modeling here and there, but it's mostly like hair stuff because I have so many tattoos now. Yeah, that wasn't a failure, that whole modeling thing, because it was completely outside of my comfort zone. I never experienced anything like that in my life. It was a very big culture shock because I went from the Midwest to freaking crazy Manhattan. I don't know how I did that as an introvert, but I was thriving for a while there. Like, I really liked it until I didn't anymore. So, yeah, my last job, my corporate job, I learned a lot about Excel spreadsheets. I learned a lot about doing international business. I learned a lot about export because I was basically a supply chain analyst. That's what I did. My title was a buyer/planner, but I didn't really do much buying or planning at my job. I just did, like, you know, export. I managed that and stuff, and I was really good at it. But after a while pursuing my creative endeavors and doing art shows on the weekends, making art after work, and then doing my job too, and just the stress of dealing with international coworkers that were, some of them were very pushy depending on which culture, and I'm not villainizing anybody, but it just became to be a lot. Because I think I had 12 countries underneath me that I was managing, and it was a lot. I've mentioned this in a video before, but once my boss had left, like the best boss in the world, seriously, I'm not joking when I say he was awesome. When he left, I didn't really have anyone to have my back anymore, and so I couldn't do it anymore. I did it until I couldn't, and I was like, dude, like, my mental health isn't worth it, my actual health isn't worth it. My hair was falling out, I didn't want to leave the house, I was super isolated. So yeah, that job that I hated, working at that clinic where me and that manager didn't really see eye to eye, there was a big stretch in a long period of time where I wondered why I was even there in the first place. And as I reflect on it, I realized that I learned what I didn't want, and there were patients that I met throughout the journey that I lit up their world, they told me, and they lit up my world. There were friends I made. The coworkers that I had, there were like 3 in particular. They were like, well, there were more than 3, but 3 core people that I worked with. Most amazing people I've ever met in my entire life. I still talk to them this day. And there's a lot of times where we wonder why we're at a job that we hate, or we're at a place that we don't like, or a place that's uncomfortable. And I myself have to remind myself this a lot of times as well, because I'm still in the journey. I am in the messy middle of pursuing art. I know it's not like the most deemed worthy, or like people people refer to me as being unemployed when I actually have a business, which sucks because I just feel very alone in what I'm doing. But I think I'm developing tough skin, and I'm learning to make my own choices regardless if people accept them or not. Not everybody has to agree with what you're doing. And when you have a vision, not everybody's gonna see that, and you're gonna reach a very painful moment, which I'm in right now. And there's a lot of times where I feel like I'm drowning. And I know it's for a greater purpose, and I'm not on the other side of that, so I can't really exactly tell you what it is right now, but I know that the destination I'm getting to is going to be very profound, and it's going to be glorious. And a lot of times it is about the journey, because I learned a lot. And is any of it a failure? I don't think so. Because every single time God was looking out for me, even if stuff went south, even if things got sour, even if a guy broke my heart, even if I found something on their phone, even if I found them being shady behind my back. Yeah, so like at the end of the day, is it a failure? Like, who gets to say if it's a failure or not? I think the only person that can really tell you that is yourself, you know? And there's a lot of times where things can feel like a failure and we beat ourselves up, and I go through that with my art, but I haven't failed because I keep showing up, you know? I think there's a lot of times where I tirelessly pursue it, but I know that being creative is what I'm supposed to do. Is it painting? I don't know. Maybe not.
Wow.
But I just keep creating anyway. I keep making videos anyway. I keep showing up on my live stream anyway. Because if I've learned one thing in my life, it's that I learned that consistency is key. And consistency pays off. When you keep showing up, people start to notice. And sometimes it's for a long period of time. Like before I got my promotion, I thought it was very fast because I wasn't expecting a promotion. Within 6 months I had a promotion because I busted my butt and I worked for it. And I just was like, all right, if I just put my head down and do this work, you know, because I was hired through a temp agency, I was like, well, maybe I'll just get a job internally and they'll like hire me on this role internally. And that job was supposed to be temporary. The original job I had, I wrote instructions for the assembly lines, and I don't really think any of this is a failure. I don't think that anything in life is a coincidence, and I think that sometimes we need a reminder. So if I can do that for you today by sharing the stuff that I went through, a lot of it I really took to heart because I'm a very sensitive person, for one, and for two, God is developing my character. I'm learning patience, I'm learning boundaries, I'm learning to set boundaries, which is uncomfortable sometimes. I'm learning to pursue the things that I want, stand in the unknown, even if I can't see what's on the other side. And you will see crash out videos on my YouTube. Why? Because I'm human and I'm not perfect. Because I'm still healing through trauma. I'm still healing through the damage that past relationships have had on me, trusting the wrong people, that affecting me, so I have a hard time trusting in relationships. One of the things that I'm working on, I'm not proud to admit it, but I'm flawed. I'm just like you. I'm just like anybody else. And the whole reason of why I'm doing what I'm doing is because one day I want to donate a part of my income to a fund where I can send people to get help. Because there was a time where I couldn't afford it. And one of those times is actually right now, because, you know, I wished I could go to outpatient treatment and just learn what it's about. So, you know, when that point in my life does come where I create, I don't think I'll ever want to do like a nonprofit, but like, I just want to be giving to people and be like, okay, well, you have all these bills, let me cover those and pay for your treatment so you can get the help that you need to get better. Because I know how hard life can be sometimes, and I know what it's like to feel alone. I know what it's like to feel like you have to do everything by yourself. Throughout this time, I've created this sense of hyper independence. It's like a blessing and a curse. It's good for some things, but other things it's not, because, you know, if you don't let people help you, where's the connection? So it's one of the lessons I'm learning in life. That's a self-revelation, or a turning point that I came to. But yeah, I don't think that any of it's a failure. I think that all of it led me to where I'm at today. Every job that I've had, every role that I've had, even if I've ended up quitting, never been fired. I've always quit, knock on wood. Hopefully I don't have to get another job. I can just pursue this, because I do all sorts of stuff. But yeah, thank you for listening to my long spiel and for being here. This is a safe space. Please feel free to share a failure. I put quotations because what really is failure? Share a story down below. Share your so-called failure and say what you learned about it. Or if you're in the middle of something and you need some encouragement, drop a comment down below. We can all lift each other up. I want my channel to be a safe space where people can feel like they're supported and have this little sense of community. So with that being said, I don't know what I'm doing in life, but I know that consistency pays off. And I really don't believe in failures. Even if it's a failed marriage, if it's a failed relationship, because out of all of that, you learn something along the way. You take something with you out of it. And maybe you can help somebody else with that thing that you learned. Anyway, biggest Minnesota goodbye ever as always. Until next time, my homages, I hope you enjoyed this. Peace the F out and have a great week.